Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you guys attending. My name's John Box. I am in Developer and Platform Evangelism, or DPE, so I'm one of the guys with these evangelist titles. Based in Memphis, Tennessee, I work on a team that covers Central Region, and we pitch new technologies to customers and try to do PR and customer evidence around it. So I've had a lot of experience in the last year working with customers implementing IE9 and trying to do different things with our new browser. So I assume everyone here is a web developer. Pretty safe choice, right? How many people are developers? How many people are not developers in this room? Cool. So what do you guys do, just out of curiosity? Architecture? Cool. Engineer? Interesting. All right. Okay. So we're going to talk about IE9. I know the title says HTML5 websites, but the principles I'm going to show today are all applicable to HTML4. All right. So you judge me. Let me know if I missed the boat on anything that I show you today that won't work for HTML5. It's all the same thing from the perspective of diagnosing and what customers we're finding that are experiencing IE issues. How many people have deployed an app that depends on IE9 or is supportive of IE9? Just raise your hands. Nobody? How many people have a website that's public-facing today? It's a good chunk of the room. And so how are you supporting IE9 today? It's working okay? No changes, just work. You flip the switch and you're good to go. All right? Well, good. That's a sign of your maturity, because I've had plenty of corporate customers whose sites broke when IE9 came out and broke when IE8 came out. So a lot of things I have to do, if it's a customer that we want to target, has a huge brand, and we're trying to get them to do something cool with our browser, I'm the fireman. Or I know the real fireman. How about that? So what we're going to do today is talk about some principles and really focused on the F12 developer tools. One thing that I find when I go to some of my corporate customers in the central region, so the middle third of the U.S., is that they're not aware that we even have these tools at all. So that's an important thing because they're there for you and they are very helpful. How many people are Firefox fans and Chrome fans before IE, just out of curiosity? And that's fair, all right? We've lagged in the past, but we're coming on strong. IE8 was a big step. IE9 is a bigger step. If you disagree with that, come see me later and we'll duke it out. All right? I'm not on the IE team. I'm a field-facing guy. I'm a whipping post. So you come whip on me and let's just figure it out. We'll figure out if you're ignorant or I drank too much Kool-Aid, one or the other. So it could be, I could be, well, never mind. I'm not making any derogatory comments towards myself. So what I'm going to do today, we're going to do a highlight of the tools. I want to point out a couple of new features that people that say they're web developers are not aware of yet, and I want to call some of those out. The list is not very big, but they are impactful. Then I'm going to talk about a couple of tactics, styles I use for debugging. I get a lot of requests where people say, our site breaks with IE9. And it could be HTML5 efforts. It could be just trying to get their site to run today. And I have to go through this process of figuring out why. And that's very interesting because usually they haven't done their homework yet. And I'm going to show you some ways to kind of get started. And I'll also challenge you to take a look at some things on your own site that you might even want to look at today. You might even want to take a peek today. We'll talk about a few of those. So we'll start and talk about those tactics. Then we'll talk a little bit about profiling and what that can do for you. Everybody know we had a profiler built into IE? Yeah, really, it's only a few hands. That's good. See, I scored a point already. I'm good. My whole challenge today is I want to make sure that you go away with one learning. One learning. And I think it'll be more than one based on the way you guys just answered that question. Also, I'm going to finish up with pointing out a few other resources that could help you with diagnosing HTML5 or just general IE9 issues. That sound good to everybody? And then if there's anything I missed, feel free to let's talk afterwards. And I'd love to hear your experience with IE9 and how you're dealing with these kind of fires. So just to call some things out, I'm not going to talk to every point here, but I do want to make sure that you saw a list to make sure that there are some features here. I keep finding that folks just are not aware of them. And I don't know why that is. These things are fully documented, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. There's several different ways to get the debugger started, or the developer tools started. F12 is the common way. You'll hear us actually refer to the tools as F12 developer tools. You can get to it through the menu as well. I use F12 a lot. So what can we do? Obviously, we can get to the DOM. We can see it live. We can edit different parts about it at runtime. We can see style inheritance. That comes in handy occasionally. A full debugging environment, watch, conditional watch, variable values, all the kind of things that you might expect from like a Visual Studio environment. A lot of that is there, breakpoints, all that. So a lot of good stuff. Console is an important thing that I use a lot for a couple of different reasons, and we'll talk about that. One is to enter commands in to test JavaScript calls. The other one is it's an area to get warning messages about your page. And that's one of the tactics I'll talk about that people miss. And you should, if you haven't done this, go home against the site that you support and check it today if you haven't never done this before, because you'll be surprised what might be there. And we'll look at a couple of live examples of public websites. Most of my demos today are against public websites that I'm going to show you. So I might get in trouble later. Someone's going to send me an email and say, no, you shouldn't have done that. So we'll see. Profiling. So the ability to start and stop a profiler on anybody's site, not just yours, but anybody's site. Also the ability to export results, save them from later, be able to compare all that's in there. Search. Everybody realize there's a little search text box up there, and it's context sensitive based on the tab that you have selected. We'll look at that. And then images, obviously all sorts of reports there. The cache, there's all sorts of interesting little things here. Reset your cache, go look at the cookies. The tools menu has some interesting things that come in handy, like resize the window. Why would you need to resize your window for testing? I saw an interesting talk about this the other day where someone mentioned, we have IE9 coming for Windows Phone 7. So one way to test and get ready for Windows Phone 7, those changes that come out in the fall is make the appropriate window that looks like your phone app. You can start testing today before you have to wait for the Mango bits to get to you. So hopefully that won't be a problem much longer. You'll have the tools to be able to get to. The other thing is validation. I'll have a section on validation. I kind of call out the way that you can, the systems you can have validate your page, and we'll show an example of that as well. One of the things I have run into is that some folks are learning HTML5 and they call me and say IE9 breaks their HTML5 stuff, and it turns out that it's them. Not always, but it could be them. So I'm going to kind of show you an example of this. So in case you haven't seen IE9, hopefully everybody's seen IE9. A much better product, and we keep moving forward. We're going to have a quality browser. I think we have a quality browser now. If you don't, would love to hear your feedback afterwards, and would love to collect that and take that to the product team. So where do we start? Let's just start with a very simple example here. Are you guys familiar with Carl Franklin and .NET Rocks? Cool show. Been on for a long time, but just going to kind of use them as a little bit of a way to demo the tools here. There's nothing wrong with their site, by the way, so don't take any. I'm not trying to make any point out of them. These guys they're very smart. They do a lot of good stuff. I listen to their shows a lot. This is just the way to demo the tool. So this is the tool itself, and we have different ways we can work with these windows here. So I can push it down to the bottom. You'll notice it's at the very bottom now, right? And I've got a menu that I can get to. I can restore it back. I can unpin it, that kind of thing. And then you can just start getting into, so I've got a Windows 7 box, so I can do the snapping and all that. So a lot of times, depending on what I'm doing, if I'm doing a lot of debugging, then maybe I have this set up. A lot of times when I'm just learning a site, I've got it pinned, and I'm just trying to figure things out. A lot of interesting things you could do. There's a lot of little features, and I'm not going to show every one because we'd be here all day, and I'd bore you to death. I went through each menu option, right? That would kill you. How many people are bored already? Just checking. No hands. It's a good signal. I appreciate that. So I'm not going to go through all this, but there are some that come in very handy. So how about find? So how many times you try to figure out someone else's HTML, you inherit some programmer's stack of elements, and you're like, where the heck is this at? How do you find it, right? So this is anything new, right? I can just hit find. I can go find different spots. You notice how it's putting little borders around? And if I click on one of those, it opens up the DOM and puts me right into it, except for you have to do it right. So now I'm looking at their live DOM. I'm right to that spot where I could do whatever I wanted to, including edit different attributes. I could look at the styles over here, and this is a very handy thing to do when you're trying to figure out what's going on with your page if it doesn't look the way you think it should look. I can even do things like see how they're being traced. I can look at the layout of the page, this particular element on the page, and what's going on around it. So that comes in very handy. And then I can also edit things here directly for any kind of element that you'd want to look at. And this goes for the HTML5 tags as well. So a very handy little thing to be able to come in here and just tinker with things. And there's a lot of different ways they let us edit the attributes in different places. So a lot of flexibility based on your work style that you'll develop. Now the other thing, how many people are using jQuery in here? Wow, okay. That's a lot. And what I've found as I'm looking around at sites, everybody and their mother is using jQuery. All right, so what I want to do, I'm just going to grab a little code here because I don't want to type all this. It's always fun to go to somebody else's site and add jQuery to their site. So, and this will come in handy, especially when you're testing, or how many people do consulting in here? So you inherit someone else's code all the time. You're going to go through and play with it. And sometimes you can improve their site by adding a framework like jQuery. So what I'm going to do is just jump over to the console. An interesting thing about this console, you'll notice already, when I mentioned earlier, the console lets you see messages about this page, and you'll see that there's already a message up there. And there's some history to this one. It's a security thing, and ask me later about this one. It's very interesting. So what I want to do first is that text I just collected, which I'm going to go right there. So what this does, it finds the head, loads up jQuery from a known public spot, and then appends it. So I've got jQuery loaded. All right, nothing fancy there. You just run this script. And you could do the same thing, right? You could put a breakpoint in your JavaScript, jump in, and start typing in live calls. This may come in handy if you're doing jQuery things and you're trying to get back a set of elements you want in a special query. You could do this right there and just practice it, get the code the way you want it, and then do your thing. So at this point, you go back and grab some of these. You take any kind of function you want. I'm going to do this just for fun. Well, we can do this one. So go back to single line mode here. You see what I'm clicking here on the bottom. If you do multiple lines, you can type them all in and then hit run script. You can go single line and drop something in and just hit enter on it. So what does this call here do? It's going to take, all the anchors. And I could do it this way, right? So I could oops, not that. So let's say you're trying to work on one of your jQuery debugging issues. You can get back the list of elements to make sure it's the exact kind of list you want to have. You can also do the UI things as well. So you notice I just faded out a bunch of stuff. I can bring them back if you know the right function call, so on and so forth. Now the other one I was going to do, just to call it out, is this, nothing, this is not that fancy, but it's interesting to do. So what is this one going to do? In this case, if I left it this way, it would find all the elements that had the class called class, and apply a red border around it. I'll just go back to doing it to the anchors. So you can actually mess with the page live at runtime, do different things with it. And whoever wrote this page for Carl and the guys, they didn't use jQuery, so I'm just kind of playing with it, all right? And if the page already has jQuery loaded, you can also jump into that page and just start typing away as well. So just a simple little thing to do. Now, why this particular feature that I just did, putting red borders around things, is not impressive because, well, let me ask you, why is this not impressive? It's already built into the tool. So, yes, that's exactly right. So what I would do is show you tools. You can do it in a couple different ways, but here's one. I've just thrown outline elements, lets you apply some different rules and put a color around them for what you want highlighted. So if I just did like divs and anchors, update, close this, and then I can see kind of how their page is set up. And there's all sorts of things you can do with that. Totally customizable. So that makes sense? It's a nice little tool. You can do a lot of different things. So, as I said, I do a lot of diagnostics work. What I usually do is we're throwing ideas at people about how they can apply HTML5. We're starting the conversation with our customers about how to get ready for one code base that goes across multiple platforms and device types. And that's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to how all that's going to work out, especially since Windows Phone 7 is going to support the same browser. So that's great for Microsoft and for you guys that are Microsoft partners and doing that kind of work. That's going to help your story as well. So a couple of these tactics. I'm going to kind of work through each one. I'll show you demos against live sites on each one. I won't be hand coding. We'll actually look and diagnose live issues on live sites today. So one of the first ones, let me just fly through these really quick. Validation, important. Understanding what's going on, where the console window will give you warning messages about that site, to give you hints to things that you're not even aware of. Sometimes you are aware there's a problem, but you're just looking for smoke signals, right? Changing the user agent. This is a handy little tactic to understand if someone has some invalid sniffing going on. Changing document mode also provides hints for a page that's not working right. And then lessons from one of our new features, the network tab. Anybody use the network tab? Anybody? So how many people use Fiddler in here? So if you use Fiddler, you're going to like the network tab. It's built right in. So we'll talk through that. So the age-old question, if you're going to do HTML5, if you're going to build a page, what would you need to do? Now, is this the minimal HTML5 to make an HTML5 page? I'm asking you guys. No, you can even go smaller than this, right? But this is a nice template to start with. I call this out because got a call one day, and somebody said, my page is not working, and it was because they had left some important things out, like the doc type, right? So, and I'll talk about why that's important here in a second. And let me just kind of do that now. So this is a live site from a book sample, and I'll talk about the book here in a second, because it is a good book. But the early version of the samples for this book didn't include the doc type. So I've already told you what the solution was. Let me show you how this works out. So this is an HTML5 app that's got a canvas tag on it. If we went and looked at the code, you'll see a regular canvas piece of this. And it's supposed to cover up that message that says your browser doesn't support it. So if this message is still there, it's kind of the fallback, right? It doesn't think I support Canvas. Well, so let's understand what's going on here. I'm going to press F12. I see one weird thing already. So I usually look at these first. Everybody understand the difference between browser mode and document mode? This will be handy to understand the difference when you're dealing with IE8 and IE9. But this should probably read IE9 standards mode. And we could have a whole conversation of why your pages should say that it supports IE9 standards mode and why you'd want it to be IE9 standards mode. It will help your code be ready for this all one code base idea that you should be working towards, all right? So we'll talk about, if you needed a quick fix, can I get by for the moment, then you could do the XUA compatibility tag in your page or at the server level. Does anybody use that today? The XUA tag, you know what I'm talking about? Got a couple? So it comes in handy. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But so I know I've got a problem. Let me show you what I can do here. So I went through and when I started looking at this book sample, and it's a really good book, but the samples had issues, and just expose this. It's not a huge page, pretty simple page. Hopefully you guys can see that, but I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it when I first looked at it. I'm learning HTML5 just like you guys are, right? And I went to this page and I'm like, what's up? Couldn't figure it out. So I just, for the heck of it, checked out this validate option. I said, validate HTML. All right, do I want this page to be validated? Yes, I do. The W3C has a validation service. So what this is a public page. It basically passed the URL to their service. And what is the first thing you'll notice here is that there is something wrong with that page in W3C's eyes. So even if you're learning HTML5, or even if you're an expert, I should say, sometimes start here, just to make sure, all right? Now, the other thing that stood out to me is this is supposed to be an HTML5 page, but what does W3C think it is? Another clue what was going on here. Pretty simple example, but I've run into this a couple of different times. Scroll down, start looking at the actual issues of this. This is the culprit that gets the whole thing started. All right, so what I did, let me just close all this. Now, I'm a Microsoft Kool-Aid drinker for a long time, so I'm using Visual Studio to edit my pages. How many people are using Visual Studio today to edit pages? Wow, a lot of Kool-Aid drinkers, great. So thank you for doing that. So here's this page. Now it's showing all the JavaScript. And the view I showed you a while ago in the developer tools was just the HTML side of that, right? I could have clicked on the script tag and got the other view of that from the code perspective. You'll notice that I've added the doc type. That's all I've done to this. And if I just go and do some testing here, I'm just going straight IIS. You'll notice that the canvas is showing and the ball is bouncing the way the sample was supposed to. And what I also do is to give Dr. Myers a plug here for her book, since I don't want her to think I'm making fun of her sample. You should check this book out. It's really great for, she works with college students, so she has a very nice way to explain things, and you should check this book out, especially if you have someone going, hey, how can I get started in web development, or how can I get started with HTML5 development? Take a look at this book. Nice, easy book, pretty quick read. Just watch out for the doc type. So I'm going to come back to this and use this for a sample later. But that's too easy, right? That's really too simple. How many people have run into a problem like that? Ever? The validator? How many people are aware that the W3C had a validation service? Good. So how many people weren't aware that it had a validation service? Great. So I scored points, plus one again, right? So here's the next thing. And I don't validate, usually not the first thing I do. This is usually the first thing I do when someone says, hey, I've got an issue with my page. Now you'll notice here, I've got Microsoft.com up. I took a screenshot. I could do the same thing. You can go do the same thing on your machine today. If you got IE9, go to their site, press F12, click on that console tab down there, and see what it tells you about your site. Here's a professional site, and there's error messages in there from IE9. So not that they did a bad job, but they should take a peek, because obviously there's some things in there they're not aware of. These are interesting. So the first one says, it's just saying, hey, compatibility view is being turned on by something. All right, and if you ever looked at this whole idea, how is compatibility IE9 standards mode or IE8 mode turned on, there's a flow chart that explains all the different ways it could happen. So this is just giving you a clue that this is being set. That's not so bad. So you'll notice the I as an informative or an information deal. The next one are the little yield warning messages. And so a CSS file was ignored. That doesn't sound good, all right? And then the third one is that security error about links. And the deal there is we're trying to keep people from detecting whether you've visited a site before. And one of the things that we found out people were trying to detect, they'll put links in code and see if the color changes, they know you visited that site, and they were using it as a way to track you. So this is one of the things that we're setting here. So you can do this on your site. I would challenge you to go do this on your site. Just make sure, because you want to see, first off, what standards mode is your site working in? Hopefully it's IE9 standards mode. If you run into a problem with IE9, then you may have set the XUA tag and it says something else. Let's take a look at a few sites just to see what's going on. So I got a whole list of sites to work with. I'm not going to try to do all of them, but just to show you a few. Let me do the F12. I'm going to click on the console tab here. Do refresh. And there's the messages I showed you before. All right, and you notice I can still browse, right? I'm not covering the page. Let me do another one here. So here's Tech Ed. They've got a couple of messages, not too bad, but there are a couple there. There's that link issue again. So that was Tech Ed. Now this one's interesting, and then we're also going to look at another one of the new features that's going to come in handy. So I went to this. This is a pretty important website, I would imagine, since it's the federal government, and not that I support the federal government. But they have an issue here, and I don't know, has anybody seen this error before? If you look at, there's an MSDN page that talks about the typical IE9 problems that you run into, and this error message comes up. And I won't tell you what's going on yet, but let's just go take a look. Now, the great thing about this one is I can click on this link and to see what this DOM exception is all about. If I click on it, somewhere in that JavaScript on that line is a problem. All right. Now, here's one of the new features right here. You go to this nice little handy menu, say Format JavaScript, voila. Now, that is a cool feature. How many people didn't know about that one? All right, plus one again, great. Now, here's the next thing. Now, you can put a breakpoint. We're going to debug this one live. You can put a breakpoint on one of those very long, minified lines, and you can figure out the right spot, and you can put the breakpoint in the middle of it and hit the right spot. I'd rather do it like this. This is much easier in my eyes. When you guys get to my age, you'll see this is just an easier way to go. So let me make sure I verify the line again. I'm going to click on it again and make sure I get a highlight. There it is at the bottom. So I'm just going to click on it. A couple different ways I could, just like Visual Studio, right? I could press F9. I could click on the side over here, whatever I want. And the problem here is this create element is actually the issue. Create element gets used in a lot of different ways, and they're mostly invalid. So when you come to us and say, by golly, you guys don't believe in standards, and then now we're enforcing one of these standards, and we're enforcing it more strict than anybody else is, this one's going to hurt you a little bit, all right? Now, I'll show you why. It's easy to fix, but you need to be aware of it. So I'm going to say start debugging, and let's just, there's the page. So here's the trick. I'm going to highlight this A, right? And this is the beauty of the debugging environment. I'm just highlighting the A there, and you'll notice they're creating a line dynamically that, in this case, they're going to add a script and throw some JavaScript in there. The reason this is breaking is because of invalid characters like less thans and greater thans, the kind of opening and closing brackets for elements. That's the part that's wrong here. And so if you're in IE9 standards mode and you're using the create element and you have certain types of characters in there, we're going to throw an exception on you, and then part of your page is going to stop working. So I've had to deal with this multiple times this year. Pretty easy fix. I'm not going to change it for them, but we could, right? But be aware of this one. It's one of the common errors we see. But just to call out again, that little format JavaScript piece was very handy and helped me figure out what was going on, and then to be able to put a breakpoint, see the value, understand what's going on. So what do you think? Pretty cool for that one? I thought so too. So go back here and pin this guy. So some more error messages here. This first one is the HTML 11:15 error. I've blogged about this one because what happens is if you're trying to set standards mode, let me just look at their head element here to show you what's going on. Go this way. So what I'm looking for is the XUA tag. Do everybody realize what I'm saying when I'm kind of shortcutting the word there? But this is the official way to tell us what standards mode that you want. All right, and this is not something you would generally leave in your code for a long time. You probably want to default it based on the doc type, but what they're trying to do is tell us that they want that standards mode. And when they tell us, we'll take the compatibility button off the top of the Chrome. All right, you know what I'm talking about, the compatibility button, this little broken page looking icon up here? So if you'll tell us, we'll take it off. That way the user, you've set it, you don't want the user flipping it, we can deal with that. Although if they know about F12 tools, they can come down here and click on this and change it, all right? So the question is, what is the difference between browser mode and document mode? So browser mode is what the client is saying that it is. The document mode is what the server is saying which rendering engine they want the client to use. And it's kind of a subtle thing. It'll mess you up for a couple of times to think through it, but you'll get there. And it's certainly an interesting conversation of when, why, how would you use this? Hopefully we're coming to a day where you won't have to worry about this. But for now, you're going to have to. If you have some old code that can't work in IE9 standard mode, you're going to want to know about this topic. It's going to come in very handy for you. And we have several of our customers that we've worked with this year that have to use this until they get to their next major kind of rewrite for some things they want to get out of their code. It could be a minor fix. Like the error that I just showed you with the invalid character, that could be an easy fix to get around that. But that one easy, quick fix for them until they get to the point where they want to do a serious update of their site is just to add this tag. And instead of saying IE9, they could say they want IE8 standards mode, and then they're fixed and moving on. So great question. All right. So this HTML 11:15 error that I was just talking about, it's a warning. It's not really an error, but it's a warning. What they're saying is, when this web developer indicated that they wanted IE9 standards mode, they indicated it too late. When in the head element you express resources that you want downloaded, if you express them before the standards mode is set, they lock it at that point. That's what it means by when it says finalize. So this is a very simple message. One of my issues that I deal with some of the documentation people is, why isn't this explained anywhere? And so those things are coming. They're working on that, and they're definitely going to correct that. So let me go to another one here. Another interesting site to go to. I want to do this. I want to do that. Get me out of here. All right, cool. So this is a company that's based out of Dallas called Superpages. a very heavy traffic site. Let me go to maps here. And this is a good site. They do lots of good things. Take a look at the page. It all looks normal, and it is normal right now. They are one of these companies that had to put an XUA tag in there to indicate they wanted something besides the IE9 standards mode. But let's have some fun. Remember I said that the consumer or developer, maybe a really techie, nosy consumer, could go in and reset this. So I'm going to press F12. And when we do this, we're going to notice that the current page is being served up in IE7 standards mode because they have a tag in there that says, hey, that's what we need. But let's see what happens. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to your site. You're going to say, well, I know I have issues. I'm going to start testing for IE9, and this is one of the ways you can start that process. Now, what comes back here, notice all the nice menus. They're all bleeding now. This second set of menus are almost not apparent as well. So we know we've got some issues. Now, a couple things, when people say, hey, my page is not working, and I get to a page like this, I'll do a couple things. So one of the ones that I love to do is change the user agent string. All right, now this comes in handy because I've run into multiple occasions this year where people were doing browser detection, and I've seen anything from a wrong regex that didn't look at the value correctly. I've seen another regex where they were looking for one digit. So sometime when IE10 comes out, and in their code they're thinking they're checking for IE1 for some reason, they're going to have a problem. So let's see, this happens to me all the time as well. And I can detect they have sniffing issues. I come in and say, all right, what if I told you I was Google Chrome? And I refresh the page, and all of a sudden the menus start working right. Now, it's still IE9. I still used IE9 standards mode, but it's all working right. So this is saying that there's something with a detection issue, right? In this case, it's their style sheet. The Google style sheet for the Chrome style sheet works better for this experience than ours did because of the way they coded it, right? Another thing they could easily fix. At some point, our whole hope here is that you won't have to code for IE, right? That's the whole thing. And when I tell people that, especially if they're a hater, if they're a hater, they go, yeah, right. Because we've caused you so much pain in the past. How many people have to write extra conditional code because of IE? Raise your hand, right? So I just want to say, I apologize. I also want to say I didn't do it. I also want to say I understand exactly where you feel. I understand how you got there. And I know those guys in Redmond are doing a great job to correct this. Our whole deal is you're going to have one code base. And I don't know if it's been said this week or not, but what I say in front of my typical customer presentations is we don't implement all of HTML5. You may have some marketing people tell you that we do. We do a lot of it, but we do the core pieces that are pretty stable, pretty ready. And if you test with us first, you're in great shape for the other browsers. We'll give you a one code base option. So that's my HTML5 talk, soapbox. And if you want to come back to me with things that we did wrong, feel free to come back and talk to me afterwards. I definitely will listen to it. All right, so this is a great test to do to verify they have a detection issue, right? It's not IE in this case. It's actually the web developer, all right? Does that make sense? I could go further and actually show you the style stuff, but that would start getting boring. Let me just check again. How many people are bored yet? No hands. All right, good. I brought some stuff to throw just in case, but we're good. No, thank you for that. So if you have an issue where you can flip the user agent string, that's another tactic that I do. Let me keep going here. So if you notice, there's a text box in the top right-hand corner of the tools, and it's a search text box. It is context sensitive based on whichever tab you have selected. So if you have the HTML tab selected, as in the picture here, you are searching into the DOM. All right? And you can search into the CSS, into the script. If you're profiling code, you can search into results of that. If you're in a network trace, you can search for a certain resource name. They also implemented the selector API syntax here. So you just start with an @ sign and then do the regular thing that you need to do. It comes in pretty handy. So I've given a few examples there. Like if I want to find all the divs on the page, @div, hit enter. You'll notice the arrows for forward and next. So I can get through and find them all, and it just jumps around and whatever you need to do. So it can come in real handy. So let's go find a live site to work with. Let me close this for a second just so you can see what's going on here. Now, this is a live page. You can bring this up if you can see the URL. But you'll notice in the middle of this page, it looks like something's missing, right? If I scroll down, I keep going, well, there's a crossword puzzle on top of other text down there. So I know there's something going on here. What's going on? How can we figure this out? So I could cut to the chase of how I had to do this, but I know that they were basically expecting some data source to come online. It didn't come in online in X number of seconds. They fall back to this other Flash-based word game. The other thing that's interesting about this, I don't know these people, so we can talk about them, right? So look at the error messages on this console. These people need to see this talk, right? Because they just need to take a peek and see the hints that are happening there. So what I'm going to do is go over here and take advantage of, happen to know where the issue is. Let me go back this route then. Fine. So when I start looking around here, keep on going to find the right one. So what I'm looking for is a div. And this is the culprit right here. So what they did was, if I actually trace it all the way to the JavaScript, where basically the original crossword puzzle source didn't happen. They dynamically created an iframe, put it into the page, and then some of the alignments got messed up, and so I could go through and actually find this particular element. A couple different ways I could do it, but I could actually go in and change this and hit the right spot in a couple different ways and reset the width issue that they have, and we put it back right to the right spot. Okay? And all it was is they've got some offset issues. They've got elements inside of elements inside of elements. The bottom one in this layering is too wide. IE is taking it and sending it way down the page to make up for it. So this is the issue. It's actually this little value right here. So that's another example of a couple different things that we could use here. One would be I could look at this layout value and drill into it this way. And these numbers, you can change these on the fly as well. So a lot of good stuff there. I could do it in a couple different ways, but this is one example. I could change it right there. I could edit it. And after I edit it, here's another feature. See if you know this one or not. Notice this little save option here. So you can click on this, and now I can export and save the HTML and go hand it to the developer and tell them what I did. How many people did know about that feature? The rest of you knew about that feature? That's good. I have a lot of people who don't know about that. So you can export. You can whatever changes you make to what's in memory of IE, you can save that and hand it off to someone. Okay. Now, one of the new nice features in this version of IE Developer Tools is the Network tab. Now, I talked about the console command earlier. I made the mention of where there's smoke, there might be fire. The Network tab is also another source of smoke signals. There's a couple different things that will help. In this screenshot, notice the HTTP results. And they make the red ones, for like 404, so you can find those easily. This comes in handy because it only takes a second to profile the page, take a peek at it, and see if there's any results that you didn't expect. I've seen this happen for images. I've seen it happen for CSS files, and both of those can be pretty impactful. You can have others as well. If you miss a JavaScript file, then that's an issue. The other thing to notice here is they show you where this resource got downloaded in the lifetime of the page. So notice the green bar and the red bar. Now, how many people know what that green bar means? Close, but a little more specific. You could have cheated and read the slide. On green, there's an event called the DOM content loaded event. So this means that basically the HTML is downloaded and some of the other script resources ahead are downloaded. So I appreciate who cheated and already knew the answer, but you held back. Nice. I love honest people. The other thing is this red line. And this is basically the load event, right? So now it means that your script's ready to start executing against the live DOM. So if you have things that are being downloaded and they're showing up late, you can tell because they're to the right of the red line and they're supposed to be at the beginning of the page. That's a problem, right? You can also make decisions about if you got a page that's slow could get downloaded because you got a lot going on. You might look at things that you don't need that are getting there on time and think about, well, I may defer those for later download, right, to when you do need them. So there's a couple different things you can use out of this. The other thing that I can find here is this second bullet point, multiple issues. One of the things besides just performance, network performance, maybe your server performance can come in question here. Another one, though, that I find more than anything is the MIME type that we're enforcing with IE9 standards mode. If you indicate your CSS is just a text file only, that could be a problem. This is kind of default stuff that most of you probably don't have to deal with that maybe your web server guy would. And we'll take a peek at a couple of ways this might impact you. Now, that previous screen was the summary view of a network trace. When you click on one of those rows of that report, then you get a window that looks like this. That has multiple tabs. And just like you would expect with your Fiddler capability, you can look at the headers that are sent to the server. You can look at all the response back to you on the response side of this. You can look at the cookies that went with it. We'll look at the initiator tab in a second. But we also have this timings tab that give you a breakdown exactly how this resource worked on this page. So just kind of walk through a couple of these. You'll notice there's a name on the left, like in this case, wait, and then there's two columns, the offset and the duration, and then the key. The key, all it means is where it is on the right. So you'll notice the colors. Since these are so fast, not maybe the best example, but the way you would interpret this page is, so the wait is when the page started. So 16 milliseconds had gone past before it got to the point of starting to work on the request. All right, and then at 31 milliseconds, it started sending the request. And then the second number for this row would be when the last byte got to them, or actually when the last byte was sent to them. Then the next one, the response, is when you started getting the first byte back. The second column is the last byte that came back. And then the gap is from when that finished to when the page got finished. So you kind of understand how well this resource is working. So this is a handy little thing to have in case you want to fight anybody ever need to buy more bandwidth? This mic could help you in that. Anybody want to go fight their network admin or their server admin that this web server is not getting it? This might help you in that. You can export these findings as well and be able to compare. You have to be tricky comparing these things, all right? You have to really kind of do your due diligence because a lot of variables come into play when you're trying to compare. And then you'll notice the DOM content and then the load event, which is the green bar and the red bar, to kind of show you where this happened at. And this resource obviously did very well, right? Because it's way up front, didn't take any time to get down, that kind of thing. The other tab I mentioned was the Initiator tab. And the Initiator tab comes in real handy for a couple of different things, specifically if the resource didn't make it at all and you're trying to find out where in the heck is this thing in the HTML. Because especially if it's a big page or you inherited the page, you're not familiar with it, this can come in real handy. So you'll notice the link at the bottom left. So if you got a 404, you click on that 404, then you click on this Initiator tab, then you click on that link and you go right to the HTML. So come in handy. If you have your page dealt with support, like how many people have a support arm that can take calls on your website or about your website? You have to deal with anything like that? This is a great tool for them to be able to use to help you find that issue much quicker. So let's take a peek. A couple examples here. How many people know Uncle Kracker? Music guy, had a pop song, kind of had some nice little hits. He's doing country music now. This is a live site. This is a professional recording artist. He doesn't write his web page, by the way. But does that web page look right? Okay, so what's the first thing that I told you I did earlier today? Most of the time when I want to debug a page when something doesn't look right, what's the first thing I do? Console tab, all right? So we could do that. Let me show you just real quick what the developer or what the network trace looks like just for a second. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to say, now another thing, you can hit this refresh button, you can press F5. Be careful if you're looking at caching issues. So you might want to look at clearing the cache for this domain, all right, or do a Control F5 to do the refresh this way. All right, so I'm going to just hit Control F5. Hello. Notice what I just forgot to do there. Anybody see what I did? This button right here, it says Start Capturing. I just want to point out that was a test. That was just kind of a demo right there. Important button to click on. Now I'm going to do the refresh. Now the other thing to point out here is if I jumped around to multiple pages, it does reset this report. You can have it hold on to multiple entries here, but I like to leave these clicked so it resets each time. So if I visit multiple pages and I turn this off, I can see the messages from all those pages in one shot. The default is it resets that console window or this trace here when I change pages. So just pointing that out. All right, so a few things here. Look at the page. The first thing I'm doing, I'm looking for 404s. All right. Looks good. Right? I don't see any reds. Looking for red, no red. So, all right, nothing there. So now I'm scratching my head going, all right, I thought it was going to be something I could find easily. Fall back on the console. Just make sure, just a quick check. All right, so a couple things. They obviously have some kind of script issue here, and you can click on it. We can go check it out. This was not very informative because it says line 1, character 1, so not helpful. We know there's a problem, but not helping you find it yet. But that's one issue. That's not the issue we're going to deal with today. Now, the second and third warning are interesting. CSS was ignored due to a MIME type mismatch. and it actually tells me which files, the global CSS, the home CSS. So let me go back here just for a second. And you'll notice here, there's global and home. We got the file, so what happened? If you'll look at that text there, I hope that shows up pretty well, but that is an invalid MIME type syntax. Okay? They're trying to do a good thing there, but they actually kind of messed it up a little bit. So we could work through that. We could change it. Ultimately, they're going to have to go to their server guy and have something changed here. Because what's kind of weird about this as well, the 2 lines above worked just fine. They made it, they got applied. But then the next 2 didn't, just because they added, first off, a comma, and then it should be like a semicolon, and then the char set colon UTF-8 should be equal sign instead of a colon. Not the kind of reading material you want to do every day, but there it is. Now, what could they do to get around this really quick? If they can't get their server admin guy to do the changes they need, what's an easy fix? So one thing to look at here, they're currently in IE9 standards mode. So one test is, let's just go to IE8 mode. And you'll notice now, by flipping that switch, I've got a totally different looking page. Because now we're not applying the type enforcement, and now this is working just fine. So very simple to fix that, but if they can't fix it quickly, do the XUA tag. That's your shortcut, a short-term fix, and that'll get you around it until you get the real fix in. That make sense?
What's easier about making that fix?
Because you got to think about the long term. Short term is fine. Use my IE8 rendering engine, and we'll open security up a little bit, and don't have all the new things that we're enforcing for IE9. But the long term implication is you want that one code base for your sites, right? If you keep going towards IE9 standards mode, you're going to mature your code to be ready for all browsers. All right. There's also better enforcement. It'll run faster. There's several different benefits to it. So this should be just a short-term fix. The other thing is you want the other browsers, you want to be able to have a nice mature doc type when you move to HTML5. You don't want the XUA stuff in there for that. You want to be able to run the latest standards mode for the version of IE, because going forward, you want the leanest, meanest version of IE with the latest security, our best performance, like Chakra, our JavaScript compiler. I don't know if you guys have checked into our JavaScript performance for IE9, but it's good. Now, some people argue that, well, my Acme browser's faster. We're fast, right? And you show me a place where we're slow with IE9. I mean, most likely we're in the ballpark from a competitive standpoint. Even if you find an edge case where, you're a nanosecond faster, come on. Anyway, don't give me my soapbox. I get whipped on. I'll take it for a minute, but just please have your ducks in a row. You can hold me accountable to have mine too. But anyway, so you have another question, sir?
I can still go in there and I can demonstrate, instead of changing the doc type, I can change that on the fly and show the infrastructure team members that they need to make those.
So what you're asking is, can I go in and change the MIME type? That is being served up from the server. So I can't make this one. I could fake it on my own server and show how it would work different, yes, but I can't fake it on their server unless you got access to the configuration to make that happen. Most of these cases, yeah, you can make the case all by yourself. And in this one, it's a little bit tougher. And it happens, I know a little bit more about the story on this one. There's actually a CMS platform that's behind this one. I don't want to call it out, but they're actually at fault because it's built into their product. So they can override it. The customer will have to go in and override it to make it happen. But this one's an issue as well. So I found this on a couple different country music sites. I'm based in Memphis. I get to do some interesting work with country music. And if you If you saw the like the IE9 beta demo or beta launch, I was connected to the Killers. Have you ever seen this Killers? I probably shouldn't do this. How many people have seen the Killers demo? Everybody heard of the Killers? I have to admit, the old man in me, I didn't know the Killers. So this is a great HTML5 demo. I don't think anybody's shown it this week, but oh, look at this. Now, that's a very interesting demo. I should remember that. If I'd have left this is because I came from the other browser, right? I came from the other site. So now I'm good. So go to the Killers Music and show this to your business leaders in your company, saying this is the kind of experience we need to think about. I don't want to get too much deep into this, but think about your traditional menu system. Each of these elements on here, this uses the canvas tag, and it looks like it's a 360 view, right? It's one picture. They're just drawing it like crazy. And this is one of the beauties of IE9. Not that you need to do this for your consumers, but it's a very interesting kind of thing. These features in the scenery are the navigation points. They're entries into their navigation. And this is a great sample to show because canvas, SVG, video, audio, good stuff. And then another one that I looked at that I got to work with through a very nice partner in SparkArt here. Anybody see the Bon Jovi demo that we did at Mix? Wow, +1 for me again now. So go to visitmix.com. It's actually live.visitmix.com. All of the Mix content was recorded. Everybody know what I'm talking about Mix here? Mix is a conference we have, a web conference, happened in April. We showed some more very interesting HTML5 demos in the keynote. There's several good ones in there, but check out the Bon Jovi director cut experience. So basically, you can go to director.bonjovi.com. You can make a video. It's all an HTML5 experience. Every concert, they do like 13 cameras, and you can actually make your own video cut. And it's an HTML5 experience. Totally wicked cool. And check that out. Also done by SparkArt. Very, very good partner of ours. All right, I got to get out of this. We'll be here all day. 10 minutes. I got to speed up. So, one more here. So, as an example of the network tab, now this is the sample that we looked at earlier. And you'll notice here I just inserted I had to fake this one, right? Notice the X at the bottom. Everybody knows that familiar symbol, right? What does that mean? You messed up an image somehow. Well, not you. Maybe somebody else did. But you know what this symbol means. So let's do this. Just kind of show you what's going on here. I'm going to do the network trace. I'm going to start capturing. Going to refresh it. Now you'll notice here that image. I've got some red text here. I can click on it, and this was the tabs I showed you earlier. So here's the timings tab. All right, and that tells you how you're doing on that particular resource on the page. The initiator tab, and the beautiful thing of this one is that link at the bottom. So if I click on that, it takes me right to the spot. You can kind of look and see, well, what do you think's wrong there? All right. So at this point, I could go to the HTML. A couple different ways I could change this, but I could do that. And then if I refresh, what am I going to get here? It's going to kill me and hit the thing again. Good. So there's the image as it should have been. So as I know it's a contrived, very simple example, but when you're trying to find out what's going on really quickly, that link is going to come in handy, especially if you're having to decipher somebody else's page. So I know not a great, cool demo, but when you're having a fire, that one might come in handy. How many people ever had a fire? All technical guys have, right? Come on. You got some manager that's not understanding why isn't this working right. Why did this pixel not look pink when it should have, whatever. So, I know, some of y'all have been there. Profiling. This is another feature. How many people realize we have a profiler built into developer tools? Let me ask you the other way. How many people don't know that we have a profiler built into developer tools? Come on. All right. Another +1 for me, please. So, very simple to do. A couple different ways to attack this. There is a button, Start Profiling. You let it run on the page you want to go after, and you can do multiple ones. Notice there's a kind of a drop-down box on the right-hand side there, so you can have multiple reports. Note also there's a little diskette symbol, so you can actually click on that, export these results to a CSV for later. All right, so the other thing I like about this, where it says call tree, there's two different ways I can view these functions. And there's one that's just a straight function list, and there's one that's a call tree. So you can see how calls are actually included in other calls. So it's kind of a nice little way of looking at the stack. Now, another thing, how many people know what the console object is? Raise your hand. Wow, okay. More +1s coming. So, how many people know .NET in here? Sweet. Remember the debug object? This is your debug object. Now, if you had been a Firefox guy and a Firebug guy, you would know about this object because well, not necessarily. There's people in that crowd that don't know this either. They have a console object as well. And it comes in really handy for debugging. How many people use alert for diagnostics? Come on, we have all done it. Don't act like you're Mr. Coder to me. We've all done it. Well, this is a way to do it without having to stop your code. You can put these debug statements in, and there's a couple of issues with it, though. If you have your developer tools on, great. It takes the console and it throws messages into the console window. If you leave these console calls in there, it will throw an exception when you're not in the developer tools. All right, so it works the same way on Firebug as well. All right, so then you're down to you have to take that code out for production, or you can figure out a way to put a wrapper around it or dummy it out. All right, you know what I mean? So at the beginning, you could do something high in your code that says, if the console object doesn't exist, I want to make a new console object that does nothing. You can dummy it up that way, or dummy it out, however you want to say it. So the different messages here, the different kinds of functions, there's console.log, console.info, console.warn, console.error. These come out color-coded in your command window. You can right-click and say, I only want to see certain error levels. All right, so this all should be new. You said most of you are like .NET guys, right? So I'm assuming ASP.NET, is that right? How many people are doing ASP.NET? All right, how many people are not doing ASP.NET? Few, good. So, just simple error level stuff. We've got an assert. Everybody should know what assert is. A clear to clear the console, and console.dir. How many people do not know what console.dir means? Really? The rest of you do? Oh, wait a minute. The question I asked earlier when you didn't know what the console object was, this is a mathematical improbability at this point. Someone did not answer the question correctly. So console.dir, you pass it an object and it dumps out the properties of the object. Could come in handy if you wanted to put in a try catch, and in your catch you might want to dump out some objects that were alive in that function. So great for logging again. And then there's console.profile and console.profile.end. You use these when you want to do some runtime performance profiling at a certain spot in the code. If you say start profiling, like I showed earlier, it just profiles the whole page. You may not want the entire page. You may have some crazy, horrific coding you're doing in a special set of functions, and you don't care about seeing all the other HTML, like get element by .id. I'm looking for this area that's calling out, an AJAX call 57 times. You might be looking for something like that. So it's a way to narrow down your view of the profiler. So let's step through here. I only got a couple minutes left, so I need to do this quick. Make sure I'm good here. I'll leave it in there. I'm good. All right. So what this code does, this is this bouncing ball demo that I've been showing a couple times here. And I'm just going to start it up. And so it's just basically a way to learn how to deal with a canvas and how to draw the ball multiple times. And we can draw this thing many times a second, right? That's the beauty of using graphics enhanced displays and our Chakra engine to do a machine time compiling of the JavaScript. It's a good combination. So one thing about this is I'm looking at that, and I can move that ball probably 100 times a second. But that doesn't look like it's moving that fast, all right? So I'm questioning what's going on here. So let's go to the profiler, start profiling. I'm going to let it run for a minute. I'm going to stop profiling. I just clicked on that. Now then, this is a list of all the functions that were called while I did the profiling. The better view that I like is the call tree view. So now I've got a nice view of this is the function that ran over and over and over again. I can expand this, and I'm looking at that going, all right, so they all happened 20 times, but one of them took basically 5.9 seconds. That doesn't seem right. That looks interesting. Let's see what's going on there. It's calling something called a very complicated function. We open this up, and it's calling date and get time. Now, the beauty of this, too, is you can not only profile your code, you can profile your third-party library code like jQuery or whatever else you're bringing in. You can also profile our DOM calls to make sure that we're performing right. And you'll have the proof. You say, he's not doing what it's supposed to be doing here. You could try that. Well, hopefully, we're doing good. I have confidence that we're doing really well, so I don't think you'll be pointing a finger at us too much. Now, the beauty of this is I can double-click on this very complicated function because something doesn't seem right about it. And now it takes me right to the script tab, and it takes me to that function. I can start looking at it, and you can see here I'm just faking here with the basically stall for 300 milliseconds, the inappropriate sleep statement in JavaScript. That's the issue. So now I know where the problem is. Now I could do some other things here. I did some other examples. Let me just close this for a second, and I'll finish up really quick here just to show you the syntax of a few of these. So I did console.log. It's that simple. Now you don't have to have a debug statement, right, or an alert statement. You can put these in your try-catch. Definitely love to do console.error, ERR, in the catch. And again, we go to the console in developer tools. We can filter those. If I wanted to, I could put console.profile and a report name right here and capture those and then archive them off. So check out the console object. There's a lot of good stuff. Now the other thing too, before I forget, because I think it's a cool function that comes in really handy. As you guys are going to be building bigger, more advanced web applications in the future, with HTML5, it's what's going to happen, right? Going back to the console. Now then, I can also do messages here, right? Something cheesy. And you'll notice that it pops up as that informative deal. So if I did console.warn or whatever, they have their color syntax highlighted for you. Now the other function I meant to call out here, I just think it's cool. You say console.dir and you put in an object. Now, I'm not really looking at their code, so I don't know what objects I've got. So what's an object I could use? How about console? So console.dir dumps out all the properties and functions for that object. So when you've got a catch block and you want to kind of say, hey, I know something's blowing up here, I want to capture some of these objects, because in your more advanced programs, you're going to have a ton of objects running. Some of those are going to be very important to help you decipher what's happening. So check these out. And then a lot of times when you dump objects out like this, you'll have every once in a while the ability to do a link. At the bottom, it'll say like add to watch. You can click on that and it'll add it to your list of watch variables. So there's some assistance there as well. So let me keep going here because I'm running over. I'm going to get you guys out on time. A couple other things. Don't forget Fiddler. There's some very important difference between Fiddler and the network trace. Fiddler is an HTTP proxy that's built into the network stack of the OS, right? The network trace, the network tab, is built into the IE network stack. There are different places in the layering, right? So if you want a truer view, and you can obviously do some other interesting things with Fiddler that you can't do with the network tab, check out Fiddler. Super Preview, check that out. It might cost you a little bit of money to see the better view, but there's some actually goodness there when you want to compare browsers, as well as, you can test. You can sit there and take your page and say, I want to test IE9, IE8, and Safari on the Mac. And it'll go do that for you and show you side by side. It's pretty cool they can do that. To get that particular capability, though, you've got to spend a few bucks. But the few bucks may be worth it, right? When you're under fire, you got the manager pointing that finger at you, it may be worth it. So let's keep going here. We're done. Thank you for the time today. Let me just review my tactics, recommended tactics for fixing your HTML5 websites, right? Validation, especially if someone in the party is new, you want to validate. And it's built into the tool. You can have it sent for validation. Won't cost you anything. Check for the warnings in the console. Today, you should go and check your site out, all right? And if you have fun and want to make fun of your neighborhood programmer friends, go check their site out, all right? Don't be afraid to test acting like a different browser, changing that user agent string, and then test with a different mode. Sometimes that works and you understand what kind of issue you're dealing with. And then the network tab, don't forget, look for your 404s, look for the MIME type mismatch issues. Also, you got that link and that initiators tab to help you find out in the HTML where that source was being requested. So thank you very much. Point out a few other things. There are other good talks tomorrow as well. I'm doing one on pinned sites. How many people don't know what pinned IE9 site pinning is all about? Don't know. Anybody don't know? Come back tomorrow afternoon, find me on the schedule. I'll show something that will change your life. You can do it today. You don't have to be HTML5 ready to do it. I'm going to be hanging around the innovation booth on and off tomorrow. If you don't see me there, ask around for John Box. They'll find me. And here's my blog URL. Thank you very much, guys. Hope you learned something.